A piercing howl split the pre-dawn stillness, then silence. In the faint glow of street lamps, Scout's paws shredded the frozen earth. He clawed until the hard ground gave way. Snow and dirt spraying like confetti in the bitter wind. Each ragged exhale puffed white clouds into the icy air. He didn't breathe, he clawed. He didn't stop, he dug. A single, desperate mission drove him onward. Welcome to the Heart Force channel, where you and I find more meaning in life through dog stories. Before we continue, please comment below and let us know where you are listening to this video. And if you have any stories about my loyal friend, please share them with us. The first pale light of dawn revealed Scout's raw paws, slick with blood. Willowbrook Commons lay blanketed in snow. The pines bowed under its weight. A small crowd ringed the scene. Rosa Delgado, who ran the coffee cart by the park gate, passed out steaming cups. "He's been at it since midnight," she told onlookers, worry creasing her brow. "My son saw him digging through the storm." Harriet Miller stood at the edge of the gathering. At 68, the retired schoolteacher carried herself with the same quiet authority she once held in her classroom. She watched Scout's frantic frenzy, heart-clenching. For months, she'd seen the golden retriever mix return here, always to this one spot, but never with such madness in his eyes. Today felt urgent. Something whispered in her bones that this day would change everything. A uniformed park ranger stepped forward, voice firm. "Please back away," he ordered. "We need to secure the dog." "Wait." Harriet's tone brooked no argument. The crowd parted as she slipped past the ranger and knelt beside Scout. His fur bristled, but he bowed his head, nose buried in the hole. Harriet reached in, wincing as the cold bit her fingertips, and closed them around something solid. A collective gasp rippled through the witnesses. Harriet lifted a silver pendant, encrusted with frozen loam. Its filigree glimmered in the weak sunrise. On its front, 2 letters were engraved. Yell. Hands trembling, she cleaned away the grime. The locket clicked open. Inside was a tiny photograph. Edges curled with age. A boy's face stared back at her. Eyes bright, hair windswept, cheeks flushed with childhood laughter. Behind him, placid water stretched to a row of leafless oaks. He's standing by Willow Lake. A voice cracked. Robert Hayes, the mailman. "That's Ethan Langston." Scout froze. His amber gaze locked on Harriet as if he'd just completed his purpose. The crowd fell silent. Even the swirling snow seemed to hold its breath. Harriet's pulse thundered in her ears. 15 years had passed since 6-year-old Ethan Langston vanished from these very trails. The official report called it a tragic accident. Only a single red sneaker ever found at the water's edge. But everyone knew the park changed that day. Martin Langston, Ethan's uncle, retreated into silence. His sister, Rebecca, fled town. And Willowbrook Commons fell under a long, mournful shadow. Behind Harriet, the abandoned Langston estate loomed at the park's boundary. A once grand stone house, windows boarded, ivy choking its walls. It had been donated in 1952 by Caroline Langston. On the promise, it remained a public refuge. Martin had kept that promise with religious devotion, until grief claimed him, too. 5 winters ago, he passed away alone on a bench overlooking the lake. Now Victor Monroe's development plans threatened to erase every trace of the Langstons' legacy. His polished renderings promised luxury condos and retail shops. The town council wavered as tourism dipped and taxes climbed. Few had connected Scout's sudden appearance to Martin's death until this morning. Harriet rose, locket in hand. Scout's ears pricked as she scanned the crowd. "This belonged to Ethan Langston," she said, voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. And Scout knew exactly where to find it. Murmurs rippled like wind through the pines. Rosa's coffee cart rattled as she leaned forward. "You don't think someone hid it here," Harriet finished, sliding the pendant into her coat pocket. She met Scout's expectant gaze. And now the truth comes out. She turned to the gathering. "Maple Ridge, Pennsylvania," she announced, raising her voice so every tourist and local could hear. "This park has secrets older than we dare imagine. We owe it to Ethan and to every footprint etched into these trails to uncover them all. Behind her, Scout dropped a final clump of frozen soil. His tail wagged once, slow and deliberate, as if to say, "The hunt has just begun." Harriet returned home as snow drifted along Elm Street. The locket burned against her chest. She slipped inside her cottage on Pine Avenue, boots clacking on hardwood floors. Scout patted in behind her, eyes bright with purpose. She set the pendant on the kitchen table. Its silver surface gleamed against the worn oak. Scout nosed at it, then nudged toward the door. "All right, boy," Harriet said. "Show me." He bounded ahead into the storm. She pulled on her coat and followed. Street lamps cast long shadows. Every crunch of snow felt urgent. Scout led her to Willow Lake's west shore. The old boathouse stood half-hidden by pines. It was rotted, paint flaking. A single lamp flickered inside. Harriet paused at the threshold. A chill ran down her spine. Scout's ears pricked. He darted forward, sniffing beneath a broken plank. She knelt beside him. Beneath the floorboards, she spotted a rusted tin box, half buried in snowmelt. "Good boy," she whispered. Inside lay a battered child's journal. Its leather cover cracked. Harriet's fingers trembled as she flicked it open. The first entry was dated April 2008. "I hid the map here. They won't find it. Not unless they know where to look. Scout is real. He guards the truth." Her breath caught. The handwriting was small, but certain. She traced each letter. Scout let out a soft whine. She read on. "Victor said he wants the land. I heard him talking about digging. He has a plan. Uncle Martin told me to remember the pine tree." A thunderclap of realization crashed through her. Victor Monroe's firm was now named Monroe Developments. He'd spoken at the council just days ago. She looked up. Scout was already leading her deeper into the boathouse. He stopped at the base of a giant pine root jutted through the floor. Harriet knelt and scraped away snow. A corner of weathered fabric emerged. She tugged. A folding map slipped free. The map bore a crude X, marking a point in the woods behind the Langston estate. Lines traced winding trails and a small B by a giant oak. Her pulse thundered. This wasn't just about a missing boy. It was about something buried, something Monroe had killed to protect. A sudden snap of twigs outside jolted her senses. Scout growled low. Harriet pressed a finger to her lips and crept toward the window. Through frosted glass, she saw a dark sedan parked across the clearing. Two figures slipped into the shadows. They carried flashlights. One bent toward the boathouse window. "They're watching," she whispered. Scout lunged, barking. The figures dashed away. Snow exploded in flurries. Harriet grabbed the journal and map. They raced back to her cottage. Inside, she locked the door and stoked her fireplace. Scout lay by her feet, tail thumping. She spread the map on the table. The X sat south of the old carriage path. The oak tree stood alone in a clearing, just past the Langston stone wall. What had be buried there? Gold? Documents? A child's final secret? Her phone rang. Sheriff Douglas Anderson's name flashed. She answered. "Harriet, I saw Scout at the boathouse," he said, voice low. "Looks like someone tried to intimidate you." She swallowed. "I found a journal. I think it belonged to Ethan Langston." Silence crackled. "I'm on my way. Don't touch anything else." She hung up. Scout nudged her leg. She scratched behind his ears. Her living room clock ticked with heavy authority. Every second felt like a heartbeat. An hour later, Anderson arrived with two deputies. He wore jeans instead of uniform pants. His presence carried decades of unspoken guilt. 15 years he'd chased false leads. Now he believed. They crouched around the table. Harriet laid out journal and map. Anderson's eyes misted. He mentioned a pine tree. He whispered, tracing the X. "My father used to tell me stories about Martin's secret safe." Scout whined. Harriet patted his flank. "He thinks we should go tonight." Anderson nodded. "Let's move." Heavy coats and flashlights accompanied them back into the woods. Snow muffled every step. The carriage path lay half-buried. Scout led the way, nose to the ground. They reached the Langston wall. Its stones rose like gravestones in the gloom. Scout slipped through a gap. Harriet and Anderson squeezed after him. In the clearing, moonlight glinted off icicles dangling from a lone oak. Scout halted and stared. Harriet swallowed. Here. Anderson knelt and probed beneath his flashlight's beam. He uncovered a metal ring embedded in frozen soil. With effort, he yanked it up. A trapdoor emerged, rimmed with rust. Harriet's breath caught. They pried it open. A spiral staircase descended into darkness. Cold air wafted upward. Ethan's hiding place, Anderson murmured. They descended slowly. Snowflakes drifted down like silver embers. Harriet held the journal against her chest. At the bottom, a narrow room lay carved into bedrock. Shelves lined one wall. Documents were stacked neatly in oilskin wraps. Harriet gasped. All the town records, missing files. Martin hoarded them here. She unwrapped a bundle. The top sheet was a deed signed in 1952, but with an addendum. It stipulated the park remain undeveloped forever, enforceable by the Langston heirs. Anderson blinked. He protected it legally. We just needed to find the evidence. Another bundle revealed letters between Monroe's father and Martin Langston. They planned to sell the boathouse land for a quarry, until Martin backed out at the last minute. Monroe Jr. never forgave him. Harriet's hand trembled. The betrayal ran deeper than she'd imagined. Monroe had orchestrated Ethan's disappearance to force Martin's hand. Then Scout whined. He nosed at a small chest on the floor. Harriet opened it with a key from the journal's final entry. Inside lay a single object, a carved wooden whistle. Scrawled on its side were the words, "When you need truth, call." Harriet lifted it. A wave of warmth pulsed through her. She recognized the design, Ethan's favorite toy whistle. A sudden creak echoed above. Footsteps at the hatch. They raced up the stairs. Harriet squeezed through as the trapdoor slammed. Anderson cursed. Scout barked frantically. They emerged into the clearing as the hatch creaked shut. The branches above swayed, laden with snow. Harriet breathed in the cold night air. In her hand, the whistle felt alive. "We have everything," she said. "Now we prove Monroe's crimes." Anderson nodded, eyes steely. "Tomorrow, we bring it to court." Scout let out a soft bark of approval. For the first time since dawn, Harriet felt hope bloom like a spring flower. Snow melted into slush under the courthouse steps. Inside, Harriet Miller and Sheriff Douglas Anderson faced Assistant District Attorney Claire Rogers. The map and journal lay spread on a steel table. Flashlights from the night before still glowed faintly in Anderson's cruiser. "You have solid evidence," Rogers said, voice low. "The deed, the letters, the whistle." Harriet nodded. Victor Monroe thought he could hide it all. "And nearly did," Anderson added. Rogers gathered the documents. "We'll file a criminal complaint. Then an injunction to halt Monroe developments." Harriet's heart pounded. She glanced at Scout's photo on her phone, ears alert, eyes luminous. He'd led them to the truth. Now she worried for him. By noon, Monroe's legal team countered. They claimed the deed was forged, the letters altered. They had their own expert handwriting analyst. The ADA nearly faltered. "They'll stall us," Rogers warned. "We need public pressure." Outside the courthouse, word spread like wildfire. Reporters clustered, microphones thrust forward. Monroe stepped through the doors in dark glasses. He spoke of unfounded allegations and business as usual. He smiled, a shark's grin. Harriet's stomach twisted. He knew the whistle existed. He knew she had the map and journals. He'd watched them in the boathouse. Now he would strike back. That evening, Harriet returned to her cottage on Pine Avenue. Scout lay curled by the hearth, limp but alert. She knelt, brushing snow from his muzzle. "Good boy," she murmured. She unwrapped a sandwich and tea from Rosa Delgado's coffee shop. A note lay atop the containers. In jagged handwriting it read, "Stop digging, or you'll lose more than a dog." Her blood ran cold. Scout's ears flattened. He whimpered. Harriet tucked the note into her pocket and hugged him tight. She called Anderson. He arrived within 20 minutes, cruiser tires hissing on wet asphalt. 2 deputies watched the driveway. "He'll try intimidation," Anderson said, scanning the dark tree line. "We'll increase patrols." Harriet nodded, though doubt gnawed at her. She slipped the whistle into her coat pocket. Sleep came in fits. Every creak woke her. Each car door slammed, triggered panic. Scout stayed by her side. At dawn, Rose's frantic voice rang on the phone. "Harriet, the shop's broken into. Come quick." Harriet flew out the door. Scout bounded after her. At Rose's corner cafe, glass lay shattered like ice. Tables overturned. Papers scattered. Scout ran inside, nose low. Harriet found his collar on the floor, empty. "No, Scout." "No," she whispered, dropping to her knees. Rose's eyes brimmed. "I locked up last night. He was here." Harriet's chest tightened. She searched the wreckage. Under a stool, she found a muddy scrap of fabric, same color as Scout's leash. Her pulse quickened. He'd been dragged out. Anderson arrived moments later, face set. "He'll try to leverage Scout. We need to find him before." Harriet felt bile rise. "Before he hurts him." She slammed a hand on the counter. "He won't." Rosa handed her a coffee. "Your tea always kept me warm. Now it keeps me brave." She squeezed Harriet's arm. Harriet nodded through tears. "Thank you." They called in every unit. Deputies fanned out. Anderson checked the map's X location, but Scout wasn't there. That afternoon, a deputy flagged them down on Edgewater Road. He held an orange safety vest and a torn corner of Scout's bandana. Both lay near an old gravel quarry. Harriet's legs went weak. She gripped Anderson's arm. "I'll go," she said, voice shaking but firm. Anderson put a hand on her shoulder. "I'm with you." They drove along the narrow route past the abandoned mill. The wind rattled bare branches overhead. Mud spattered their boots as they reached the quarry's edge. Yellow caution tape fluttered where the ground gave way to deep water. Snow and mud churned by fresh footprints. Scout's tracks, half sunk in clay. Harriet knelt, wiping mud from the print. Then she saw it. A single paw impression on a flat rock beside the water, as if he'd stood and whined. She swallowed. He was here. Anderson swept his flashlight across the dark water. He couldn't have fallen in. He's a strong swimmer. Suddenly, a faint bark echoed from the far edge. "Scout!" Harriet called. The echo came again, weak, distant. She shone her light toward a rusted pipeline spanning the quarry. "He's on the other side," Anderson said, voice taut. A narrow ledge ran beneath the pipe. The deputies spread out, flashlights bobbing. Harriet's breath froze. She gripped the whistle. "Scout!" she cried, voice cracking. Another bark. Closer. Pained. Harriet scrambled onto the ledge. Sludge sucked at her boots. She edged forward, heart pounding. Anderson followed. Each step churned mud. Halfway across, she stopped. In the shadows, a figure loomed, tall, coat collar up, face hidden. Looking for something? The voice was low, amused. Harriet froze. Her voice caught her throat. "You're trespassing," the figure continued. "So is your dog." He raised a flashlight. Dirty boots. A glint of metal at his belt. Scout barked once more, closer now. Harriet forced herself to speak. "You have him," she said. "Where is he?" The figure laughed softly. "A clever dog," he said, "but not clever enough." He stepped aside. Scout's eyes shone in the beam. He lay huddled against the bank, collar snapped, panting. Harriet rushed forward. "Scout!" She knelt and scooped him into her arms, tears freezing on her cheeks. The man's laugh turned cruel. "That whistle. Give it to me." Harriet tightened her grip. Scout whimpered. Anderson lunged, tackling the man. They fought in the mud. The man's coat snagged on jagged rock. He cursed. Deputies swarmed, cuffs clicking. Harriet hugged Scout. He trembled, but licked her face. The whistle dangled from her pocket. She drew it out. Its carved wood looked warm in her hand. "This belongs to Ethan," she said, voice fierce. "And no one threatens him, or this town, anymore." The man spat mud. A name tag glinted on his coat. Monroe Security. Harriet's heart thundered. Victor Monroe's henchman. The conspiracy ran deeper than she knew. Scout nestled against her chest. His eyes half closed. He'd protected her again. She met Anderson's gaze. "Tomorrow," she whispered, "we end this." Rain pounded the courthouse windows. Scout's leash lay coiled beside Harriet's chair. She studied the man in custody, Mark Holloway, Victor Monroe's head of security. His coat still smelled of damp pine from the quarry. Deputy Lopez read him his rights again. Harriet leaned forward. Why Ethan? Why the park? Holloway's lip curled. Orders, he sneered. Monroe wanted the land. He needed a story. A story? Anderson's jaw clenched. Holloway spat. He claimed Martin Langston hid something valuable under Willow Lake. Documents. Artifacts. He thought it would make him millions. Harriet's heart pounded. And Ethan saw it. Holloway chuckled. Poor kid. He snapped pictures. Monroe's men panicked. It got out of hand. Tension crackled. Anderson slammed his fist on the table. You call that an accident? Holloway shrugged. It was meant to scare him. Didn't plan for a kid to slip and hit his head. Harriet fought rising anger. She thought of Ethan's bright smile, of Scout's desperate digging. Where are the pictures? She demanded. Holloway's eyes flicked to the door. Monroe has them. A cold dread washed over her. If Monroe still controlled that evidence, the case could collapse. Anderson stood. We're taking you to Monroe's office. Monroe's downtown Pittsburgh headquarters rose like a glass tower against gray clouds. Inside, polished marble gleamed. Security cameras tracked their every move. Harriet gripped Scout's leash. He wore a protective vest. Claire Rogers accompanied them with search warrants. They entered Monroe's private suite. Guards flanked a steel door. Anderson presented the warrant. The door swung open. Harriet froze. The office was empty. No Monroe, no Holloway. Only a single safe stood behind a grand desk. Its door lay ajar. Rogers gasped. It's been cleared out. Scout whimpered. Harriet approached the desk. A scattering of papers lay on the floor. She recognized Martin Langston's handwriting. Notes about park surveys, legal briefs, and a reference to the vault. She stooped and collected the pages. Then she spotted it. Under the desk, a USB drive labeled F12 in tiny script. Good boy, she whispered to Scout, whose tail thumped once. Rogers plugged the drive into her laptop. Files loaded. Dozens of photographs appeared. Ethan pointing his camera onto the boathouse. Men drilling into sediment. Monroe inspecting core samples. Then a video file. Command. Harriet clicked. Victor Monroe sat at a polished oak table. His voice was calm. We need that child out of the way. He's a loose end. A hand lifted a glass of bourbon. Do what it takes. Harriet's stomach lurched. She nearly dropped the laptop. That's enough. Rogers whispered. Anderson locked down the office. Monroe's corporate immunity ends today. That night, Harriet returned to her cottage. The whistle felt heavy in her pocket. Scout rested on her bed, eyes closed. She filled his bowl and sat beside him, running her hand through his fur. Tears blurred her vision. We did it, she murmured. Ethan's story will be heard. Scout nuzzled her hand. His gentle strength reminded her why she fought. Sleep eluded her. At dawn, she packed the evidence and headed to the press conference on Maple Street. Cameras lined the sidewalk. Neighbors gathered under umbrellas. Anderson stepped up to the lectern. Scout sat loyally at his side. Harriet joined them, whistle around her neck. With this evidence, Anderson announced, we're charging Victor Monroe with conspiracy, assault, and the death of Ethan Langston. This town will no longer tolerate corruption. Journalists shouted questions. Monroe's lawyers tried to block the case, but Claire Rogers presented the original deed and the whistle as chain of custody proof. As the crowd cheered, Scout let out a single bark, sharp, triumphant. Inside a nearby diner, Rosa Delgado pressed coffees into Harriet's hand. You were amazing, she whispered. Harriet shook her head. Scout found the locket. He led us to the journal. He found the whistle. Rosa set down a slice of apple pie. He's our hero. Harriet smiled through tears. We all are. Martin, Ethan, Scout, and everyone who stood up. They clinked coffee cups. Back at the cottage, Harriet hung the silver locket above her fireplace. It sparkled in the lamplight. Scout curled in his bed, muzzle on his paws, eyes half closed. She walked to her desk and opened Martin Langston's final letter, written the day before Ethan's disappearance. Dear sister, if you ever find this, know you're not alone. Scout will guide you. The park is our legacy. Protect it. Protect the truth. Harriet folded the letter, pressing it to her heart. Outside, the first robin of spring sang. The snow had melted from Elm Street. Under its dark soil lay the secrets of Willowbrook, now free at last. Scout lifted his head and tilted it at her. Harriet knelt and scratched behind his ears. His gentle eyes met hers. They'd uncovered the darkest truth. Now they'd build something new, a community healed by courage, guided by a loyal dog's unwavering heart. Trial day dawned over Pittsburgh in cold light. Scout lay on a blanket at the courthouse steps. Harriet clutched his leash, the wooden whistle warm in her pocket. She inhaled, steadying her nerves. Inside the courtroom, reporters crowded the seats. ADA Claire Rogers rose and laid out the evidence. The locket, the whistle, Martin's hidden deed, and Ethan's photographs. Each item carried the weight of 15 years. Victor Monroe strode in. Suit sharp, face unreadable. He paused at the door, met Harriet's eye, and offered a faint, mocking wave. Harriet's pulse spiked. She squeezed Scout's paw. Loyalty in bronze fur. Rogers played the video file. Monroe's own voice replayed in the hush. Do what it takes. The jury exchanged glances. One juror covered her mouth in shock. Scout let out a single bark, soft, triumphant. Monroe's attorney rose to object. This is all hearsay. Fabrication. But Rogers countered with the whistle's chain of custody, the original journal entries, and Sheriff Anderson's testimony. Each link snapped into place. Suddenly, the defense called a surprise witness, Monroe's former engineer, Thomas Gale. He claimed Monroe authorized only environmental surveys. No drilling. No foul play. The courtroom murmured. Rogers stood. Then how do you explain your midnight arrival at the quarry, the night Ethan vanished? Gale's face paled. He stammered. He trailed off under Rogers' steady gaze. She pressed on, projecting clear words. You were there. You misled the council. You covered up child endangerment. You lied. Gale sank back in his seat. Next, they unveiled the email from Monroe to his father, confessing guilt. He must be silenced. The park is mine. Monroe's jaw clenched. The jury leaned forward. Closing arguments shifted the mood. Monroe's attorney pleaded reasonable doubt. Rogers rose and spoke directly to the jurors. Ethan's voice echoes in these halls. Scout's courage led us here. Martin Langston's legacy demanded truth. You have the power to honor them. Silence fell. Then the jury retired. 2 hours later, the foreperson returned. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty on all counts. A collective exhale swept the room. Scout barked twice. Harriet's relief shimmered like dawn. Outside, news crews broadcast the verdict live. Americans across the country, aged 35 to 60, watched with tears and cheers. Back at Willowbrook Commons, the boathouse stood in stillness. Harriet, Anderson, Rogers, and Scout gathered under gray skies. The rain had paused. Scout dug once more at the old spot. No silver glint this time, just soft earth yielding to purpose. Harriet knelt and placed Martin's wooden whistle beside Ethan's locket and journal in a protective case. You did it, she whispered. Scout nudged her hand. A crowd of families, neighbors, and veterans arrived, carrying flowers and flags. A new banner unfurled. Ethan Langston Memorial Park. Children ran barefoot on fresh grass. Couples strolled under oak boughs. Veterans saluted the plaque. In memory of Ethan Langston, 2002 to 2008. Guardian, Scout. ADA Rogers addressed the gathering. This park belongs to every soul who cherishes truth and courage. Applause rang out. Scout sat at Harriet's side, head held high. Weeks later, Willowbrook Commons blossomed. Harriet organized weekly nature walks. Scout greeted each group, tail wagging, eyes bright. Rosa Delgado reopened her cafe with Scout's crumble pastry, proceeds funding park maintenance. Veterans restored benches and trails. The annual Willowbrook Festival debuted in June. Local artists displayed Ethan's recovered photographs. Children planted saplings by the lake. Harriet donated Martin's journals to the public library, creating the Langston Legacy archive that drew scholars and students nationwide. Word of their victory spread beyond Pennsylvania. Towns facing similar battles invited Harriet, Anderson, and Rogers to speak. They shared their story as a blueprint for grassroots justice. Scout emerged as a symbol of loyalty and resilience in children's books and civic celebrations. One clear spring night, Harriet and Scout walked the old boathouse trail under a silver moon. The water shimmered. Scout paused at the shoreline, head tilted. Harriet knelt and whispered, "We did it, boy." Scout pressed his head to her hand, gentle and sure. At home, Harriet hung the park plaque above her fireplace. Beside it lay the sealed case with a whistle, locket, and journals. Scout curled at her feet, dreaming of buried secrets now unearthed. Harriet poured tea and opened her journal to write the final entry. Today, justice found its voice in a loyal dog's paws and a teacher's faith. The park breathes free again. May future generations learn courage, resilience, and the power of truth. She closed the book and leaned back, watching Scout's soft rise and fall. The fire crackled. Outside, willow branches swayed in a gentle breeze. Their battle had ended, yet healing, like the seasons, would continue to unfold. Together, Harriet and Scout stood ready for every tomorrow, bound by love, loyalty, and an unwavering commitment to protect the stories that matter most. This story reminds us that courage often comes on four legs, and truth can be unearthed by the most unexpected heroes. Harriet's steadfast belief and Scout's unwavering loyalty transformed a community's grief into purpose. Even when power seemed insurmountable, a teacher's faith and a dog's devotion exposed injustice. They proved that hope survives in small acts, digging a single hole, preserving a locket, sharing a journal entry. We learn that perseverance in the face of adversity can heal old wounds and inspire new beginnings. And most importantly, we discover that guardians of truth can be anyone, anywhere, at any time. What part of Scout's journey moved you most? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you believe in the power of dog stories, subscribe to the Heart Force channel for more tales of hope and loyalty.
In the early 1980s, a couple bought a house for next to nothing, not knowing that beneath the old wooden floors, a dark secret had been hidden for decades. It was supposed to be their dream home, a quaint, affordable property in a quiet suburban neighborhood. Little did they know, this house had a story of its own, one that would unfold in the most unexpected way. When they began renovating the basement, they stumbled upon something buried under the floorboards, something that no one could have predicted. The discovery sent shockwaves through the community and eventually across the internet, leaving everyone wondering, how could this have been kept hidden for so long? The couple's life was about to change forever. Hit like, subscribe and let's go. Tom and Linda Harrison had always dreamed of owning a cozy home where they could enjoy their quiet retirement years. In 1982, they finally found it, a charming fixer-upper in a sleepy town just outside of Asheville, North Carolina. The house sat at the end of a narrow, tree-lined street, surrounded by whispering oaks and the gentle hum of crickets at night. Every morning, Tom would sip his coffee on the creaky front porch while Linda tended to her small garden, laughing whenever the neighborhood cats came to visit. Life settled into a peaceful rhythm, simple, predictable, comforting. But in the evenings, when the sun dipped low and the shadows stretched long, an odd chill would sometimes creep up from the basement door. Linda dismissed it as just the draft of an old house, yet, deep down, something didn't feel quite right. One rainy afternoon, as Tom was patching a leak near the basement stairs, he noticed something strange, a faint hollow sound beneath his boots. Curious, he tapped the floor again. Hollow. The boards, worn and faded, seemed solid at a glance, but something underneath was different. Linda, hearing the odd thumping from upstairs, hurried down, her brow furrowed with concern. Together, they knelt on the cold, damp floor, pressing their palms against the wood. A strange draft seemed to seep up through the cracks, carrying a scent unlike anything they had smelled before, old, metallic, almost electric. Tom glanced at Linda, a flicker of unease in his eyes. They decided to leave it for now, convincing themselves it was just the house settling after the rain. But that night, neither of them slept soundly, their dreams filled with the echo of that hollow knock. And somehow, deep down, they both knew this was only the beginning. Over the next few days, the strange feeling in the house only grew stronger. Late at night, Tom would hear faint, rhythmic tapping from the basement, soft at first, then louder, almost impatient. Linda noticed it too, pretending not to, clutching her blanket tighter whenever the sound stirred her awake. One morning, while cleaning near the basement door, she spotted something she hadn't seen before, a thin crack running along the floorboards, almost like the outline of a hidden trapdoor. Dust settled around it unnaturally, forming odd patterns, as if disturbed from below. The air in the house felt heavier now, thick with unspoken tension. Windows fogged up from the inside even on dry days, and the ticking of the old grandfather clock seemed to drag slower, as if the house itself was holding its breath. Tom tried to shrug it off, blaming old wiring, bad plumbing, anything but what his gut screamed to admit, something was waiting under their feet. One stormy evening, as thunder rumbled low across the hills, Tom finally decided he couldn't ignore the basement any longer. Armed with a flashlight and a crowbar, he pried at the thin crack Linda had found. To his shock, the floor gave way far too easily, revealing a hidden hatch covered in thick layers of dust and rusted metal. Beneath it, a narrow stairway, spiraling down into darkness. Linda stood frozen at the top of the stairs, clutching an old, yellowed envelope she had just found tucked inside the basement wall. On it, a single word was scrawled in shaky handwriting, "Beware." Tom's pulse raced as he shined the light into the black void below. Cold air rushed up to meet him, carrying with it a strange smell of damp stone and something far older. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then, gripping each other's hands tightly, they stepped into the unknown. Nothing in their quiet, ordinary lives had prepared them for what lay ahead. The narrow stairs creaked and groaned under their weight as Tom and Linda descended, each step swallowing them deeper into the cold, stale darkness. At the bottom, their flashlight beam revealed a small underground room, its stone walls slick with moisture. In the center of the floor lay a heavy, iron-bound chest, half buried in the dirt. Tom hesitated, but something pulled him closer. With trembling hands, he forced the lid open. Inside, bundled in rotting cloth, were dozens of faded documents, old photographs, and a series of worn leather journals. As Linda sifted through them, her face paled. These weren't just relics, they were records of something far more sinister, hidden accounts of missing persons from the 1940s, notes about secret meetings, coded maps. The realization hit them like a wave: this house, their sanctuary, had once been a silent witness to unspeakable acts. Fear gripped them, cold and merciless, as the walls seemed to close in, whispering secrets too dark to stay buried. As Tom and Linda stood frozen in the hidden room, a sudden noise shattered the heavy silence, a sharp, deliberate creak from above, as if someone else had entered the house. Tom instinctively killed the flashlight, plunging them into darkness. Their hearts pounded so loud it seemed the intruder could hear them breathing. Slowly, cautiously, they climbed back up the narrow stairs, each creak a betrayal in the silence. Reaching the hatch, they peeked out. The basement door at the top of the stairs now stood ajar, swaying slightly as if pushed by an unseen hand. Shadows danced against the walls, and a faint, rhythmic tapping began once again, but this time it came from inside the house. Clutching the envelope marked, "Beware," Tom realized they had two choices: flee and leave the mystery buried forever, or stay and face whatever had been awakened. Their home was no longer theirs. And time was running out. A violent crash echoed through the house as a window shattered somewhere upstairs, scattering glass like frozen rain. Tom and Linda, paralyzed with fear, huddled near the basement stairs, clutching the tattered envelope and the old journals. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, creaked across the floorboards above them, growing louder, heavier. Linda's voice trembled in a whisper, urging Tom to run, but there was nowhere left to hide. Every door, every exit now seemed impossibly far away. Just as the shadowy figure loomed at the top of the basement stairs, a sudden gust of wind slammed the front door wide open, shaking the whole house and sending the figure retreating into the night. In that fleeting moment, Tom noticed something glinting in the wreckage, a rusted, forgotten key buried among the fallen journals. It was small, almost insignificant, yet somehow it pulsed with promise. They weren't defeated yet. Somewhere, somehow, there was still a way out. Gripping the rusted key with trembling fingers, Tom felt a surge of determination break through the fear. He and Linda scrambled back to the hidden stairway, the cold air whipping around them like unseen hands urging them forward. Near the base of the stairs, they spotted a narrow iron door, almost invisible against the stone wall, a door they hadn't noticed before. Heart pounding, Tom slid the key into the lock. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a heavy click, the door groaned open to reveal a narrow tunnel leading out into the woods beyond their property. Without hesitation, they plunged into the passage, guided only by the faint promise of freedom. As they stumbled into the fresh night air, the oppressive weight of the house lifted from their shoulders. Behind them, the old home seemed to sigh, the broken windows staring blankly into the dark. They were safe, battered, shaken, but alive. And now, they knew, some secrets are meant to be unearthed, so they can finally be put to rest. Weeks later, Tom and Linda sat quietly on a bench overlooking the woods, the old house barely visible through the misty trees. They had sold the property to the town's historical society, who promised to investigate the hidden past properly. Life felt different now, quieter, more fragile, yet somehow more vivid. They carried invisible scars, but also a deep, unshakable bond forged by the night they chose to face their fears together. Sometimes, on restless nights, they wondered what would have happened if they had ignored the signs, if they had stayed. And maybe, just maybe, the house still whispered to those who dared to listen. What would you have done? Would you have opened that door? Let us know in the comments, share your thoughts, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more true stories that will chill you to the bone. Until next time, stay curious, stay brave. In 2013, in a quiet American town, a boy's head was shoved into a toilet, not once, but twice, while others laughed. He was just 10 years old. A straight-A student. Loved books more than video games. He wasn't weak, just different. And that was enough. What those boys didn't know, is that this quiet kid would rise, not with fists, but with something far more powerful. What happened after would change not only his life, but the lives of hundreds. Teachers. Parents. Even the bullies themselves. This isn't just a story about bullying. It's a story about revenge, the kind that changes systems. And at the heart of it, is a moment that will leave you speechless. So, are you ready for what they didn't see coming? Hit like, subscribe, and let's go. Ethan liked quiet mornings. He'd wake up before his alarm, pack his books neatly, and double-check his math homework, just in case. He was in 5th grade, somewhere in suburban Ohio, where yellow school buses crawled through sleepy streets and lunchboxes smelled like peanut butter and jelly. Ethan wasn't popular, but he didn't care. He loved astronomy, spelling bees, and asking questions teachers didn't always have answers for. Every day, he'd sit in the front row, raise his hand first, and help clean up after class. His parents called him an old soul in a young body. But in the hallways, it was different. The laughter wasn't kind. The stares lasted too long. And sometimes, silence hurt more than words. Ethan thought school was about learning. But he was about to learn something no textbook could prepare him for. It started with a missing lunch. Then, a torn notebook. At first, Ethan thought it was a mistake, maybe someone grabbed the wrong bag. But then came the whispering. His name, followed by Snickers, trailing behind him in the hallway like shadows. One morning, he found his locker open, everything dumped on the floor. A note, scribbled in crude handwriting, read, "Know-it-alls don't belong here." His stomach sank. The classroom still looked the same. The lessons hadn't changed. But something had. Ethan's perfect little routine, broken. His hands started to shake when he raised them. His eyes scanned the room, not for answers, but for faces. And for the first time, he didn't want to go to school. He couldn't explain it, not to his parents, not even to himself. But deep down, he knew, this was only the beginning. The next week, Ethan found glue smeared across his chair. His backpack, soaked in water. No one ever saw who did it. And when he tried to speak up, the teacher sighed, too busy for drama. At recess, the circle of kids widened when he approached, not out of respect, but rejection. Whispers turned into laughter. The names got sharper. Robot. Teacher's pet. Toilet boy. That one stung the most, because he didn't understand it, yet. His once favorite place, the school library, began to feel cold. Even the books couldn't comfort him. He stopped raising his hand. Stopped making eye contact. But every morning, he still packed his bag the same way. Hope, maybe. Or habit. He didn't know. What he did know, was that the looks were getting bolder. The pranks, crueler. And something darker was coming. He could feel it. It happened on a rainy Thursday. Ethan stayed after class to finish a science poster, alone, as usual. As he walked past the empty gym, he heard it, laughter. Then, a door creaked open. And before he could turn, arms grabbed him. Cold metal. Wet porcelain. The bathroom. His head, shoved into a toilet. The sting of water. The echo of laughter. "Welcome to the real world, genius," someone hissed. And then silence. They left him soaked, humiliated. But not broken. That night, Ethan didn't cry. He searched. He found a camera, an old school security lens no one thought worked. But it did. The footage? Blurry, but enough. He recognized shoes. Backpacks. Voices. The next morning, for the first time, he didn't lower his eyes. He had something now. Something they didn't expect. And the game was about to change. Ethan couldn't sleep. He watched the footage again and again. 3 boys. One holding the door. One laughing. One filming. But what froze him wasn't just the faces. It was what came after. In the corner of the video, almost hidden, was a teacher. Watching. Not stopping. Not even moving. Just walking away. Ethan's stomach twisted. This wasn't just a prank. This was a pattern, protected. Normalized. And no one ever said a word. He realized, it wasn't about him being different. It was about a system that let cruelty hide in plain sight. Fear mixed with fury. He wanted to scream, but he couldn't. Who would believe him? Who wanted to believe him? And yet, something inside shifted. The pain didn't shrink him this time. It lit something. Something sharp. Focused. Because now, he knew the truth. And truth doesn't stay silent for long. The principal's office smelled like old carpet and fear. Ethan sat alone, clutching a USB drive, the footage. His fingers trembled, but his eyes didn't flinch. This was it. He could stay silent, or speak. But just as he reached to hand it over, the door opened. One of the boys, and his mother. A PTA leader. Connected. Smiling. "This is all a misunderstanding," she said sweetly, before Ethan could speak. The principal glanced at Ethan, then the drive, then quickly away. And Ethan felt it. That same silence again. Heavy. Complicit. The truth was in his hands, and still, it was slipping. But something stopped him from standing up. Not fear. Strategy. If the school wouldn't act, maybe someone else would. Someone bigger. The story wasn't over. But now, it wasn't just a schoolyard problem. It was a fight against a wall much taller. And he was done backing down. Days passed. Then weeks. Nothing changed. The bullies still roamed the halls, louder now, bolder. Ethan became invisible, but not in the way he wanted. One afternoon, he came home to find his science fair project, the one he'd worked on for months, smashed to pieces in the rain. No note this time. Just silence. And for the first time, he crumbled. Not just tears, a collapse. His safe place, his mind, cracked open under the weight. He stopped eating. Stopped speaking. Even the stars he once loved felt far away. Was this how it ended? A quiet defeat? But then, a teacher he barely knew, the computer lab tech, knocked on his desk. "I saw your video," she whispered. "Do you still have it?" Ethan looked up. Eyes red, heartbroken, but something sparked. He wasn't alone. And maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end. The IT teacher had contacts, real ones. Within days, Ethan's video reached the district board. And then, the local news. His story aired quietly at first, just another segment. But something about it struck a chord. Emails flooded in. Parents. Former students. Even teachers, all sharing their stories. The school couldn't ignore it anymore. Investigations opened. The bullies were suspended. The silent teacher, let go. And Ethan? He was invited to speak. At a school assembly. Microphone in hand, heart pounding, he told his story. Not with anger, but truth. Honest. Clear. And the auditorium listened, really listened. For the first time, he wasn't a target. He was a voice. A leader. Afterward, a younger boy came up to him. "They used to do that to me, too," he said softly. Ethan smiled, knees still shaking. Because now, everything had changed. And it started, with a choice not to stay silent. Ethan never became the most popular kid in school. He didn't need to. He became something rarer, respected. The boy who once sat alone at lunch now mentored others who were too afraid to speak. He joined the student council. Helped rewrite the school's anti-bullying policy. And each time he passed that bathroom, he didn't look away. He remembered. Not with pain, but purpose. Because the moment they tried to drown him, was the moment he learned how to rise. Not in anger. But in truth. And now, a question for you. Have you ever watched something happen, and said nothing? Have you ever been Ethan, or worse, been the one who walked away? Think about that. Because stories like his don't just live in schools. They live everywhere. Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit subscribe, share this with someone who needs it, and remember, silence protects no one.